Dad's podcast is now available wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube at the Old Cranky Man Collectibles YouTube channel. Magic Dads is brought to you by Old Cranky Man Collectibles and all of our generous patrons over at patreon.com/MtG Dads Podcast. Go check it out for exclusive content and so much more. Hey, welcome to the Magic Dads podcast. I'm your host, Blake. I'm your host, your hope. I'm your hope. Hope me, Obi-Wan.
I hope you are. Hi, I'm Stefan.
Special guest Roland.
He's big dumb dog. He's my Great Dane. I love him, but he's stupid.
So we have reached the precipice, the conclusion, the finale of our 5-part series on the 7-pointed cards in Canadian Highlander. Today we're going to talk about Time Walk.
Card's good. End of episode.
I mean, it could be. I am of the opinion Time Walk is the best 7-pointed card.
I think I agree with you. I really love Lotus, but in my heart, I think that Time Walk is probably the best.
It is hard to not love any of the 7-pointed cards. There was a point in my Canadian Highlander journey where I only wanted to play decks with 7-pointed cards in them. And yeah. I tried each one of them out individually. And I think Ancestral Recall is far and away the most played 7-pointed card.
Mm-hmm. And rightly so,
because I think it's just because... how is that you say that? It is the most evenly spread as far as floor to ceiling goes.
Correct. It's always doing the same thing.
It is the most evenly spread, but it's also it just goes in so many different decks. You can play it in Grixis, you can play it in Bant, you can play it in Teamer, you can play it in 4-color, 5-color. You know what I mean?
Gray's blue. You can pitch it to Force of Will.
Right. So Recall gets the most attention, but I think Time Walk is the best card.
You can also pitch that to Force of Will.
You can pitch that to Force of Will.
Don't.
So, when I mentioned Ancestral Recall, I said floor to ceiling, right? So a card's floor is like
worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario, what it does at the bare minimum, and in the case of Time Walk, worst case scenario is you
win the game.
Worst case scenario.
Oh, worst case scenario. It's explore.
It's explore, right?
Yeah.
Draw a card. Draw a card. You can play an extra turn.
Card's very playable.
It is a bit above an explore because you get to untap and reuse that mana again.
Yeah, sort of.
But it's explore.
Oh yeah.
Best case scenario is
win the game.
You win the game, which is something that Ancestral Recall cannot do.
Yeah, and that ceiling doesn't necessarily need to be part of a combo either. Maybe you just need an extra combat step.
Right. I have effectively done that. I played a bunch of games against Luke today. I think we played 5 or 6 full 3-game sets. And there was a number of times where he just time walked. Attack, time walk, untap, attack.
I love that moment where you're like doing math on blocks where like your opponent attacks and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to block here, and then I've got another turn, and then they go, okay, well, time block, and you're like, oh, well, I'm dead. Okay, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll scoop these up.
Yeah, that's it. You hit it. You got that.
Time walk. I have seen Time Walk and participated in Time Walk ending more games than any of the other 7-pointed cards.
Yeah, and it does it quick enough to where you don't feel bad about it, too. That's what I love about it.
Yeah.
Like, there's no point at which they resolve Time Walk, and you're like, I wonder how this game's going to go. It's usually like, I'm going to end the conversation quick.
So it has the largest gap between its floor and its ceiling.
Agreed. Yeah, whereas like Time Vault only ever does one thing. Like if you're actively doing it.
Right. Time Vault either does nothing or the game is over.
Yeah. Whereas Time Walk.
Black Lotus, it's kind of like somewhere in the middle, but Black Lotus is generally the most explosive 7-pointed card, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you have the stupid Thassa's Oracle, which I don't even want to talk about because we're talking about a good card.
Yeah.
Thassa's Oracle, it's a win condition.
It is a win con.
It's a win condition. So like the only time, like I guess if you're playing a Thassa's Oracle for value, you're probably doing it wrong. But also don't play Thassa's Oracle.
No.
No. On that note, I think Time Walk has like the fewest decks that it actually goes in.
Yeah,
right?
sort of.
Like how many decks can play do play Time Walk?
So the easiest answer is Seeker Walk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Spell Seeker is 3 points almost exclusively because Time Walk exists.
Yes.
As a 7-point card.
Yep. So in case you don't know what Seeker Walk is like a mid-range creature deck. It's generally banned, although 4 and 5 colored versions of it do exist. Generally banned. We're doing Green Sun Zenith things, Finale of Devastation things, playing a lot of Mana Dorks, things like that. And then the way that they end the game is Spell Seeker for Ephemerate my Spell Seeker, go get Time Walk, cast Time Walk, untap. Then you not retrace. What is Ephemerate? What is that mechanic called? Where you get to cast it again. You get to cast it again on your upkeep. So you either go get on the Spell Seeker, you either go get Finale of Devastation or Neoform to go find a Eternal Witness type effect, which will get you back your Ephemerate. And then you can use Ephemerate to flicker the Eternal Witness to get back the Time Walk, and then this loop continues. So you take
Rebound.
Right, Rebound, yeah. You take infinite turns.
Yeah, and you don't really need any kind of board there. The Spell Seeker itself can kind of get you there eventually.
So the reason why this, I believe, is a tier 0 deck in the format is because you don't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
You get to play a whole bunch of silver bullet situational creatures that are that things like Collector Roof that can just shut down complete archetypes. You get to play
Questing Beast.
You get to play Scavenging Ooze.
Yep.
You get to play all of the premium white removal.
Mm-hmm.
You get to play Teferi the Time Raveler. Mm-hmm. You can play counter spells. Counter spells if that's what you choose. You can play Oko. Like
Burrow.
It's
all the good ones.
Yes, you get to play a whole bunch of very, very good mid-range creatures, and you get to play like the best removal. And sometimes you just get to take infinite turns.
Yeah, it's a deck where you legitimately do not play the bad ones.
Yes,
legitimately the deck is wall-to-wall good cards, situationally good cards, independently good cards, and then also Time Walk, Spell Seeker win the game.
Right,
is just an option.
Right, you have that's your go over the top mid range thing, right? Here's your mid range deck. Okay, you can outdo the other mid range decks by doing this thing.
And you kind of, if you're playing against this deck, you're sort of fighting it on two fronts all the time because you never know when they're going to go off.
Right.
It's sort of like if Sandra Bullock is like,
you have to respect it.
Yeah. And it requires so little. Where Sandra Bullock is sort of like the Rube Goldberg machine of creature combo decks. This is the loaded rifle of creature combo decks. Where there's always one in the chamber. Just be careful.
So Seeker Walk and maybe one other deck.
Yeah, we're gonna kind of talk about this another time, but there's a deck that runs green blue, potentially 4 colors, the band, and it's not a creature combo deck. It's actually more of a control deck and a lands control deck, where you run Intuition and Gifts Ungiven as the package, along with
Time Walk.
Time Walk.
Yep.
And you get to. It's about taking turns, and Time Walk just happens to be the best of those cards. But you play all the other ones too.
Fundamentally, I think the best way to describe this deck is Turbo Fog.
Correct. Yeah.
So this deck, it's not necessarily a known quantity. I don't think I have ever actually seen this deck in the wild, but it did used to be quite popular, like basically the only way to play Time Walk before Spell Seeker existed. And now Spell Seeker is just so much more efficient at doing what it does, and you don't have to play this reactive control deck. You can just be a proactive mid-range creature deck and have access to a whole bunch of silver bullets. That being said, I mean, I do love a turbo fog deck.
Yeah, I think it's also one of the decks where Time Walk and like Time Warp sort of get to play together and also function both as fogs and as ramp.
Yeah.
And you get to utilize the floor of Time Walk in a really effective way.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then there's like, you can sort of take it 100 different ways, but if you're looking for old versions of this deck, it used to colloquially be called Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm.
In Victoria. It was sort of like the offspring of Seinfeld, which was the do nothing,
The mono blue deck.
that sucks.
Yeah.
But I think that there's real legs on this deck if people put some time into it.
Yeah. I'm actually, we were talking about it when we were doing our prep for this episode, and completely forgotten that it even existed.
Yeah, I think there's room for it to grow.
And I'm very intrigued by the potential of this now, because so many cards have come out in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yep. Yeah, I think we're going to talk about this deck in particular probably in another episode.
So something that you will see if you go back and look at any of these Curb Your Enthusiasm lists is that Time Walk did not used to be 7 points.
Right. How many points was it?
5.
It was 5 points for a long time. Because and the justification for that was the delta between the floor and the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
This was also a time before Spellseeker
did not exist. Yep.
And like we didn't have Neoform. We didn't have the 4-mana Eternal Witness.
Nope.
Yeah. It's interesting how good Time Walk has gotten. And it's weird to say Time Walk wasn't as good.
No, I mean, it wasn't. You had Eternal Witness.
Yeah.
You had what is the other one called? Archaeomancer.
Archaeomancer. Yeah.
Archaeomancer. You had those ones. And then that was basically it. Oh,
Regrowth harder.
Regrowth.
Yeah. This was back at the time when Time Vault was just far and away superior if you wanted to take infinite turns.
Right. If this was the thing that you want to do, if you want to take infinite turns.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like, putting bad cards in your deck is concerned.
Yeah.
Time Vault was just a better way to do that.
Yeah. But now we've seen Time Walk. It was at one point, and this wasn't even that long ago. I think it was 2018?
4 or 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And just all of the new cards that have come in and all the additional support for creatures and the way that creatures interact with the deck, and specifically Spellseeker.
Yeah.
Spellseeker's a card that's sort of
basically all of those cards that we listed that are part of this combo were printed between 2019 and 2020.
Yeah.
They all came between Battle Bond and Modern Horizons 2.
Yeah. You're correct. Yeah, that's wild. It was like War of the Spark, Battle Bond, Modern Horizons, and Modern Horizons 2.
It was just Modern Horizons 2.
Two gave us the 4-mana Eternal Witness.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was the last sort of nail in the coffin for the combo deck. That was it. Like, they had the package, and it was 5 cards, and it's tight, and it kills your opponent dead. And Spellseeker went to 3 points. And that was it.
Yeah, it started at 1 and then 2, and then because Birthing Pod, Birthing Pod, you could squeeze Birthing Pod into the shell, which obviously makes it that much better.
Yeah, and I don't think Birthing Pod will ever go down to 0 points. I think it's comfy at 1.
Having all 3 of those in your deck is a bit much.
Yeah, I think having the package be a total of 10 points, the deck is still super good. It's still way functional.
Yeah. So I think it was 2 points adjustments ago, Spellseeker went up to 3 points. So before you got to like play around with your points a little bit, like I was playing a lot of Seeker Walk when Seeker and Time Walk were 9 points. So you got your other point. Like you could do a lands thing where you have access to like Knight of the Reliquary, and you have access to all the lands, and then you get to play Crop Rotation as your other card.
Yeah.
And then also there was this was when Umezawa's GT was 1 point. So then there was versions where you have Stoneforge Mystic, and you have like all of these equipment, that you can go get and mess around with it that way. And then there's obviously other 1-pointed cards. Those are the 2 that I played around with a lot, though.
Yeah, and I think sort of Seeker going to 3 was sort of the concession for Pod to go to 1. Where like
Yeah. Mhm.
they can't be in the same deck together,
No,
really.
I don't think so.
And I'm comfortable with that decision. It sort of stinks because the deck doesn't have as much like the actual fixed nature of the list now is such that there's maybe 4 or 5 flex spots now. The
It
deck is just
doesn't.
so good.
It doesn't need that additional
No,
power. Like it
no,
is okay for Spellseeker to be 3 points. I mean,
yeah,
it also gets Ancestral Recall.
yeah. My yeah, that's the you could just play Ancestral Recall in that deck and like
Mhm.
that would be fine.
Mhm.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think that Walk having a home and having the best list, I still think that there's room to play with it.
Yeah,
I still think.
there's a lot of different versions of Seeker Walk.
Mhm.
There's the Bant version, there's
Yeah,
the 4 color black version, the 4 color red version, and then there's
yeah,
5 color. But between these 4 or 5 different macro archetypes, there is maybe 15 cards difference.
yeah.
Like
That's sort of what I was saying.
it's just dependent upon like what do you want to do with your extra cards? Like do you want to be
Yeah,
Ren and 6 and Minskin Boo? And then you get like Fury, or do you want to be like Grief and Baleful Strix and Leovold?
hmm like yeah. How spicy is your mana base?
Mm.
How resilient do you think you can be to Blood Moon or like Price of Progress effects?
Yeah, Luke, our resident Seeker Walk player, is just 3 colors. It's just banned.
And he's very good. That deck isn't. You don't feel like you're missing anything being on 3
No,
colors.
no, I don't think so.
I still would like to see somebody play around with a non seeker time walk deck. I think
Mm.
there's definitely room for it.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about that earlier, I'm kind of like I'm gonna go map out a deck list and see what that
Yeah,
looks like now because
you and I have been talking about this for a while.
you have so many sweet new cards that you get to play with. Teferi Time
Mhm.
Raveler, Savine's Reclamation, go off King.
Yeah, there's a lot, and like just in terms of like you could lean heavy into blue and have green be your secondary color, have like white or red be your third color. I think it's probably white, right? Like just do
You
banned.
want access to that premium
Yeah,
removal, I think. Yeah.
but then you can go lighter on creatures. You're
Mhm.
not as, and then you're not as, you don't, there's less blowout potential in regards to like Fury.
Yeah.
um and you can kind of consolidate your board presence into some more higher power.
I think depending upon how many cards you get in your like essential download, really like I would have to look at it to see,
Mhm.
and see what the list needs as far as like its curve goes or whatever.
Yeah,
Having built many control decks, I have to physically see what it looks like.
yeah, you have to see the curve, you have to see the
Before
card
I can
selection.
start to say like this is what it's missing or whatever.
Yeah,
But I'm very interested to try it out.
well, yeah, just play the good cards.
Just play the
Problem
good
solved.
cards.
All right,
Hey, thanks for watching the Magic Dads podcast. Don't forget to
thanks everybody.
subscribe to the channel. And I just want to remind you that we're proud of you.
We're proud of you. Thanks everybody.
Bye.